Webster, you've got the floor. Continue to break down what you're witnessing, and what does it signify to have International Criminal Court, other people they grab, like Milosevic, it's on record they poison, so you don't ever go to trial there. It's total kangaroo. You can't call witnesses. This is the private court of the private bankers, and they're trying to get the Supreme Court to rule they can grab Americans whenever they want. And Obama's saying they are the boss now. He takes his orders from them, not from Congress. So this is just incredible. Webster.
Yes.
Break down what's happening. Continue.
Sure. The thing you see, you go out sometimes in the daytime or at night, and you hear the sound of these NATO aircraft up in the air, and you realize that they can let fly at any time, and that they're killing people just about every day. Now, we've been rather lucky here in Tripoli for the last 3 days. We haven't had, as far as I can see, any big bombing here in the city. The bombing has been concentrated in Brega, out on the fighting front against these terrorists, along the Mediterranean coast. But they have a kind of an idea that 4 o'clock in the morning is the hour of the wolf, and that's when the NATO killers can strike, right? And there's absolutely no warning, and these projectiles break up into 8 parts, and it destroys a compound. Another compound we visited it's in a place called Sorman, if you look on the map, Sorman, 70 kilometers west of Benghazi, of Tripoli here. And this was the home of an important guy, and they were trying to kill him too. They tried to kill Gaddafi in his compound. One of the other generals that joined Gaddafi in the coup d'etat of 1968-69 that overthrew the monarchy and created a modern state, because that's what this is a guy called al-Khwaldi al-Hamidi. Al-Khwaldi al-Hamidi. He's a general, and in this ruined compound of his, you can see a picture of him meeting with Egyptian President Nasser, right, back in the 60s, presumably. So this is another one of the top people. And the NATO bombers were attempting to kill him. It's a policy of assassination, murder, mayhem, gratuitous killing. And this was, in some ways, the most heartbreaking, moving event I've seen in the trip so far. His son is a guy called Khalid al-Khwaldi, who's an engineer, trained in the United States, right, talks like an American, speaks English as well as anybody. And what had happened to him was that his wife had been killed, and his 2 children had been killed. One of his children was a 4-year-old girl who was going to have her 5th birthday now on the 28th of June. Another was a 4-year-old boy.
But Obama brought them peace. Webster, hold on. Obama told the media last week this is not a war. He brought peace to that 4-year-old. He's a man of peace. Al-Qaeda is helping. How dare you be against... I mean, that 4-year-old was...
Another one of these little kids had just became 6. His birthday had been 4 days before his death. There was one of their aunts. And then they had a Sudanese cook, an African guest worker, and his wife. So 10 people killed at about 2 to 3 o'clock in the morning when NATO delivers their cowardly strikes from 40,000 feet against defenseless women and children. And the crowning hypocrisy and depravity of this is NATO claims that this compound was a military base. Well, I'm sorry. I walked around this. We looked in the rubble. Obviously, you don't want to get too close to the rubble because it's filled with depleted uranium.
Oh, my gosh. Webster, you've got so much courage. Stay there. Journalist, investigative reporter, historian, economist is in Tripoli. And he has visited the homes of families murdered, hit by the demolition bombs. And he was just breaking down how they're using Twitter not only to foment these fake revolutions, which the Pentagon admits they're doing, but also to target who to kill. That's how they get their new intelligence. They don't have the head of MI6 lie about WMDs, is now admitted. They just claim somebody Twittered. That's why CNN and Fox always say, oh, look, we're getting weather reports from people on Twitter, is to then kind of legitimize it. Well, Twitter said Gaddafi was roasting babies. Please continue, Webster.
Yeah, the way in which the targeting was done of this compound in Sorman, where the 10 people were killed, the women and the four children killed, and it was because they're all in the family of this guy al-Qaeda al-Hamidi, one of Gaddafi's top colleagues, right? So the Revolutionary Command Council, or what that used to be. The way they seem to have done it, this is now the Libyan contention, clearly, is that they had some infiltrated spotters who got up in a local sort of microwave tower, and they had some kind of handheld lasers, and they spotted the roofs of these buildings, and that's what guided the NATO bombs down to do the killing. And somehow tip-offs or information went over Twitter, say the Libyans. So maybe that puts this giddy new world of the social media in some kind of a different light. So I think this is it's horrifying, it's disgusting. As an American, you are confronted what this regime is doing in your name with your tax money, and I think it's time to do something about it. The very least anybody can do is there are going to be these there's a congressional recess now for the 4th of July. These characters are going to be around, and you're just going to have to go to them and say, look, this war with Libya has to end. And normally the congressional comeback would be, well, we can't abandon our troops who are in harm's way. Well, in this case, the argument from Obama is there are no troops in harm's way, so there's no blackmail that can be done on this issue of, you're abandoning the troops, because Obama says there are no troops. There are troops, but Obama claims that there are not. So that, I think, is a tremendous...
Wait a minute, are you challenging Obama? This is not a war. This is a Nobel Peace Prize movement.
Yeah.
They admit it's killing a lot of women and children, but that's not civilian deaths. And you know what? Obama's a great guy. I mean, he cares about us, Webster.
What we had is the UN resolution says the defense of civilians. Now, the NATO aircraft are acting in defense of armed terrorist gangs, and they are killing civilians in the process. Look, somebody who knows something about peace, a very interesting person to meet. This is the Bishop of Tripoli, Giovanni Martinelli. And this is a guy who goes back and forth to the Vatican and has talked to the Pope about this situation. And Martinelli, he's obviously horrified by the war. He says, how can you expect to bring peace with bombs? And he also says that you have to realize Gaddafi has given full religious freedom. The Roman Catholic Church in Libya can act with perfect freedom. They have nuns, they have hospitals, they have social services. It turns out there are a lot of immigrant workers here from the Philippines. The staffs of the hospitals, of which there are quite a few and actually quite good, are largely Filipino, and most of those are Catholic. So the Catholic community here used to be Italians, but now it's Filipinos.
Stay there. I want to hear about your intel on Western forces are there, quote, advising and helping with the peace. I want to get into that. I want to get into what the bishop said the Pope told him. I want to get into the fact that Italy is, just last week, said it's time to have a ceasefire and end this. I'm going to put a tweet out in the next 10 minutes at twitter.com/RealAlexJones. We can use their Pentagon revolution system against them. And I want to ask all of you that are at twitter.com/RealAlexJones to get the Twitter I put out calling for folks to descend peacefully on the Texas Capitol 4 p.m. today. And I'll be there entering the Capitol at 4 p.m., and we're launching this citizen filibuster against this federal power grab. If they can sit there and stick their hands down your pants and crush your genitals and make 95-year-old cancer patients who are going home to die from Florida to Michigan take their diaper off and strip search them, oh, yes. They can do anything, and it's about humiliation. It's about a federal goon spy force over everything. It's in the New York Times. They're spying on doctors now, the feds are, getting ready to nationalize them, gathering up, and they call it a survey. They call them and don't let you know who they are. It's legal and lawful for doctors to have private practices and not accept Medicare or Medicaid, not go under insurance, whatever they want. They're getting ready to get rid of that. That's coming up. We've got the incredible news with the euro now going into free fall. Soros says there will be countries that exit. I want to talk to Tarpley about that in a moment. But it's so incredible. This is Webster's first interview since he got into Tripoli a few days ago. He's been unable. This was a secret mission. He didn't want to obviously be stopped trying to get over there. He's got a lot of courage, folks. Webster Griffin Tarpley. He speaks 4 or 5 languages. And he's in North Africa right now in Tripoli. And it's because of bombing, the cell phones were out until today. It's in the middle of the night. He's got a cold, but he's joining us. What do you make of Congress saying we don't authorize it, but here's the money? The Italians now shifting gears and saying, we now are against this war. It's time to stop. The Germans, as you know, a month and a half ago, pulled completely out. And then meanwhile, it's on Infowars.com. The British have now announced they're preparing to move forward with a ground force. They're moving ahead with their fake moral authority, having International Court of Criminals who routinely kill people before they try them, whether they're guilty or innocent, like Milosevic, regardless of what you thought of Slobo. They're now issuing the arrest warrant. This is going into high gear, and a top general told Congress, yes, they're preparing to invade, but it'll be a peace force with heavy armor. So we've now entered actual 1984, and I guess as U.S. troops are coming home in body bags, they'll tell us that it's not a war and that it's a kinetic action. Webster.
Well, I think if they really do take that path of absolute strategic insanity, they will face extravagant losses. Their attack will break down with great loss, and they will be caught in a quagmire, which will essentially be open-ended. And that maybe that will lead to the collapse of the Obama regime. Certainly might lead to the collapse of Sarkozy and Cameron and the other people here in Europe. I think there's probably the best combination we've got in the United States to put an end to this. Again, move those 30 votes out of the war column and into the peace column, and it'll become even more illegal than it is now. And you might say, well, that's only the House. What can they do? They can't get it through the Senate. There is one thing the House can do, and that is to impeach. And maybe that deserves to be brought up. Obama is in violation of the War Powers Act. That is a question of life and death. It's not Miss Lewinsky, and it's not any of this other minutia, but it's life and death and war and peace. And Obama really needs to be impeached. And again, I would contrast the depravity of Obama with the very good sense of this Italian bishop, Martinelli, who, he says bombs and Christianity don't mix. They're incompatible. And that you cannot base human civilization in today's world on a policy of bombing. It's just insane.
Well, look, bombs to defend yourself is one thing, but preemptive war. People ask how the Germans did what they did. Hitler had all sorts of fancy excuses and reasons to go into Danzig and then Poland and Czechoslovakia and then finally, into France. And this is how this is done. This is how wars start. And it's on record now. Even Democrats like Nadler and others, and Ron Paul has said, Obama, if he gets away with this, has turned the presidency into an imperial post. And there's no reason to even have a Congress if this is the case. I mean, this is earth-shattering. This has never happened in U.S. history. I mean, this is, at least Bush, for his evil wars, got authorization, Webster.
He went through the motions. Obama undoubtedly a step down, and I think you and I have been ahead of that most of the time over the last 3 years.
Well, Webster, you've been on target. An Obama deception. You said he's going to invade North Africa as a base to create total destabilization continent-wide. Obama deception calls it with total precision. People are now watching it and flipping out that it was made more than 2 years ago.